all of you for being here, because spending a few hours in the company of poets and people who love poetry is a particular relief after half an hour I recently spent trying to fill out a form written by people who obviously hadn't thought about poetry very much.
Yes.
I was applying for funding for my new poetry book, and the form had obviously been written mainly by people who assumed that applicants for funding would be from STEM fields. So I had to answer whether my project involved, quote, harmful agents or, quote, controlled substances. Well, maybe a poem that questions genre is a harmful agent. Maybe a standard couplet is a controlled substance. Maybe a couplet that breaks apart isn't so controlled. And we may come back to all that. But since we're speaking about art and the uncontrolled, and since Anna and Catherine did such a splendid job bringing art and poetry together, I'm going to start with a poem about that extraordinary style of art and architecture, Art Nouveau. This was inspired by living in Paris for a little while next to one Art Nouveau building covered with large flowers, covered with curlicues, breaking all the rules, and a neoclassical building right next to it, where everything was very controlled, contained. Art Nouveau, 1905. Pleasure that mocks the measured, dreaming, winking, dashing, flirting, and flashing its skirts at yesterday's rules, lined up like uniformed schoolgirls. Art Nouveau wouldn't know from maybe. Tendrils figure skate, anapests tap dance into their sunrise. Flowers on steroids, washed down with red burgundy, embrace the whole doorway. And who knows what they get up to after dark. While melancholy symmetries of next door's neoclassicism, long committed to balancing the books and the buds, avert their hooded eyes from Nouveau's flirtatious look and tighten their grip on yesterday and on their tight-lipped anticipation of tomorrow's determined restorations and reversions. Well, that classical building might perhaps have approved of the fact that I sometimes write haikus. And here's one that's very recent, inspired by a beautiful sunrise, appropriate on a very snowy day. Peony pink buds on clouds bloom just 5 minutes during the spring of dawning. Speaking of forms, I love both writing and teaching sonnets. So here's a sonnet about New York. The city pigeon flaunts its neon green necklace, as flashy as the hawkers whose corner it haunts. It's gray, the shade of slush, not dusk, and strident stripings of rust intrude on whites that should be sent to the laundry. It sounds like a fire truck with a bad cold. As for its shambling, you would be crazy to trust it with the car keys without smelling its breath. Admire these pigeons. Give me a break. But pause just a second. Cool it while it coos. Is this the music of rundown cities? Cracked violins played by those puddles and car fumes? Or might our orchestra of pigeons proffer song assuring and unassuming as comfort food? We've all been very preoccupied with COVID. I wrote a whole series of sonnets about it. I couldn't resist referring to a corona about coronas, given that that's a literary form, but I got out of that, fortunately, and I'll just read the first one. New York Times is on our porch, back there, yet just before. It rests, not stirred by its own news, not likely to dismay. I doze past 9 and will doze past page 24. News from somewhere, China, Spain, or far away. Neither the paper nor its readers will be blown away by wind. I'll miss wind of. If I open our door, I'll read of fashion, baseball, Astro's shady play, and learn how best to choose a new rug for this floor. Many of these trifling stories leave us yawning, and while I doze, he fashions pancakes. What a prize! I sleep way past dawn, never wakened by the dawning of the midnights that from now on will block out sunrise. But soon new facts will knock loud on our porch's door. Lead story, COVID-19 will shut out before. Next poem is called The Walking Wounded. So he walked out, lugging a suitcase, hugging a steel trunk of anger, leaving space in his empty closet for folded promises and molding regrets, and leaving me with enough baggage to keep a therapist or a series of poems busy for years. Well, I've read you most of my series of poems, and I don't want to exceed my own time. We've probably had enough depressing ones for a while, so why don't I end instead on another haiku? Something comes from my most recently published book, where a lot of the poems played on, riffed on the corrections that my machine's autocorrect made, where it would take one word and turn it, twist it into a totally different word. In this case, the computer turned the French word for glass into verse. So the poem is called In Vino Versitas. Spell check shatters glass of wine. Burgundy's gold moon slides into this liquid verse. And now it's time to slide into the next reader. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you.